All right, Coach Simmons here, back for season 2, episode 5, and we are diving deep on bouncing back from injuries. I think there is a universal understanding that injuries suck. And I think there should also be a universal understanding that we don't go through this process alone. Today, we're going to talk all about bouncing back from injuries. And I'm going to talk deep about the idea of bouncing back mentally. Physically, pretty easy. It's a process of slowly progressing, getting enough sleep, getting enough to eat, and just being patient. The hardest part of injuries is not the physical part. Yep, bones heal, but bones break. Emotions are tough. And the toughest thing, I think, looking at high schoolers is that quite often, once they get injured, they remove themselves from practice. And that's my number one rule, is that unless you physically can't be there, you should probably be at practice. It's great for your mental health. It keeps you engaged with what's going on. There is nothing worse than being outside of an inside joke. And when you're disengaged, it makes everything harder. It's like you kind of put a microscope to your feelings, and everything becomes even bigger and just hard to digest. So today, I want to talk about that, and I want to kind of dig deep on it. So if you've ever had an injury, if you are currently going through an injury, one of the best things you can do, plain and simple, is journaling about it. And I know you guys hate it because it requires an action. But I'm going to guess that if you are injured, you've got a little more free time on your hands. So one of my really close friends in this world of coaching, fair to call her a colleague of mine, is Priscilla Tallman. And she created a resource that I think is powerful. And again, it's one of the most underutilized resources. My athletes that do journal, they have the best understanding of who they are, not only as athletes, but as competitors and as people. And I often see injuries as one of the most foundational and biggest growth opportunities for high school athletes. And I think Priscilla would agree with me, because when you look at the 30-day reset journal, what is the tagline? An edge in sports, a habit for life. This is all about being able to understand what you're feeling and being able to put it down, but also understanding what's important to you. And so as part of this blog and as part of this, I guess, vlog, I don't know what to call this thing. I still don't know. And we're 2 seasons deep. As part of this, she's giving me 4 of the updated version of this journal to give out to anybody that reaches out to me saying, I think that would be a really helpful tool for me. And I want to show you guys one of my favorite early day exercises in this. And it's simple. It's 3 things you're grateful for, 2 things you are excited about, and 1 thing you want to accomplish for yourself today. And I think one of the things that's so important when we look at this is reminding ourselves that the world is not on fire, that you are more than just a runner. It is not your entire identity. And there are plenty of things to be grateful for, even when you can't get your miles in that day. When I look at this, she asks about 3 people who support you, 2 people who help hold you accountable, and 1 person who comforts me when I'm struggling. And the reality is that this struggle is quite often long. And it means that we have to kind of dig deep and understand who's important to us and what's important to us. And I think as we look at that, we have to remind ourselves that there are also people out there who are injured. And you may be on the other side of this listening going, thankful that's not me. Yeah, I'm thankful every day I'm not injured. And I've had my fair share. I've had my fair share of stress fractures and muscular injuries. And I use 1 rule to help me avoid them. 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. You heard it in season 1, and I will bring it back every single season that I'm able to get in front of this camera and on top of this mic. Because 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months is the best injury prevention. It's better than any pill, except for sleep. Sleep is the number 1 thing that you guys can do. But 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months is about anytime you feel something that doesn't feel right, and I mean really not right, take 2 days. If you ignore those 2 days, it's going to turn into 2 weeks of crappy training. It's going to be on again, off again. And man, how do you think that plays into your mental game when it comes to racing? Yeah. And then if we stay stubborn and we push through those 2 weeks, no matter what, turn into 2 months. I don't know why. But every time I see an athlete that's kind of on this wave of 2 weeks and they just are too stubborn to take some time off, that's when we see the stress reaction and the stress fracture. And those things suck because they put you in a boot and they take you out. Not the only things that are going to take you out. I've seen plenty of people that have had to climb back from injuries that aren't actual broken bones. Low iron, which is a whole episode that we're going to talk about in the coming weeks here. And things like just sickness and bouncing back. But the number one thing that comes out of this, where athletes struggle, is the feeling that I'm never going to be as good as I was, and especially when I have an athlete that suffers a stress fracture. That is the constant theme that I work with athletes on trying to rewire in their brain. But the only way that you are going to rewire that thought of I'll never be that good again is taking time to talk about it and think about it and actually understand that this isn't about how many miles you're running or what kind of workouts you're doing. The root cause here is that there is an erosion of your sense of trust within yourself. And that is one of the hardest things to get back. But once you identify that that's the problem, that you're struggling to trust yourself, whether that's trusting yourself to get the miles in or being able to push yourself fully in workouts, or the number one for me was feeling like I was gonna get injured again. I would feel a twinge. I'd feel a little something as I came back and I go, oh crap. Ugh. And the reality is for most people, 70% that have an injury, they re-injure themselves within 3 weeks. And that's because they get impatient, that they struggle to come back slow enough, that when they've had an injury, they're like, I have just spent 6 weeks injured. I need to get back now. And otherwise, I'm going to lose my whole season. And then the cascade of emotions. Are you guys ready? Because here's every single one that I've heard in succession. And that is, oh my God, it's been 6 weeks. And well, how am I ever going to make state? If I don't make state, then how am I ever going to get colleges to look at me? And the colleges that are already looking at me don't want me to report back that I'm injured. And if I'm injured, they're definitely going to want to lose interest in me. And I'm going to be no good for anybody. If I'm no good for anybody, I'm going to disappoint my coaches. And if I disappoint my coaches, I'm going to disappoint my family and then my friends, and then I'm not around them. And it just turns into this giant spinning tornado where you just circle the drain. And we get negative. And that is the number one behavior that I know that I'm trying to stop, that I'm trying to push uphill against, is saying, that's not real. Yes, injuries happen. And yes, at the end of the day, your performances, if you are trying to run in college, do matter. But the reality is that you are more than your performances. And the reality is that if there is a college out there that does not want you because you're injured right now, then they aren't ready to invest in you for the long term. And that's a problem on them. And all of this comes back to the idea that there is something that you are losing out on something. And the hard part is you're watching everybody else. You're comparing yourself to everybody else. You're watching friends get PRs in races. And man, it is really easy to get down on yourself. But the reality is that you need to do something about it. And that something about it, one, again, is journaling and talking about it. But number two is making sure that the doing something about it is trying to do the most you can. So the resource that I have out here for you guys is not just a run walk progression and just a grid. It's not just a slow mileage progression. I also put in some deep water rehab. This is a great resource for anybody that is injured or is just trying to be cautious for a couple days. I put a couple workouts in there. You know what else you can do when you're injured, especially with lower leg injuries? You can swim. You can lift upper body. You know, I've watched a lot of people adapt and they figure out how to bike. They figure out what they can do. So often we focus on what we can't do and we're just going, I can't run. And we get bummed out. I have watched so many of my collegiate athletes, right? That's one of the big things that athletes struggle with when they hit the collegiate scene is the training load goes up big time. And yeah, injuries happen. But they've learned how to find joy in going for a really long bike ride when they've got an injury. They learn how to make the most of a resource like an Alter-G. They learn how to swim and they become really good at it. And they find that there is more to this sport than just going out and being able to pound miles. and be able to get those things in. At the end of the day, there are ellipticals. There are plenty of things you can do. You can get stronger. You can work on one leg that works, and you can develop strength in all of the other areas that aren't the affected foot or shin or lower leg. You can still do a whole lot to stay fit and stay in shape so that when you do earn the right to come back and you have built a foundation of strength, you're going to come back a lot easier. But if you just sit on your butt and you do nothing about it, you don't show up to practice and you pout, it's going to be a rough climb back. And so make sure you're doing something about it, because if you have a fear of missing out, then play full force. That means going to the meets. That means supporting your teammates and realizing that if you can't contribute to the team as a true player out there on the track or cross, be the best cheer squad that you can be. That's the best thing you can do, is lean in even harder for your teammates and just be a darn good teammate. So at the end of the day, this mental thing is tough and it's really hard, but it also means that you need to talk about it. You need to journal about it and you need to work on it. If you're listening to this and you've sat with me for 11 some odd minutes and you're saying, I'm not injured. I'm not even close to injured. I feel great. What I'm going to ask of you is take a step back. Look around. Look around at your teammates. If you're on a club team, look at those people. Think about those people. I haven't heard from them. I haven't seen them race recently. What's going on? Some people might need a check-in. Check-ins are one of the things that help show that you care, that you love. And when you're on a team, caring and loving your teammates is essential. That's what allows you to lean in 100% and be a great teammate. And that's also what makes big comebacks special, because when you lean in for other people, when you need them, they're there. So with that said, we're closing out this episode. This has kind of been a little bit touchy-feely episode, but I think when it comes to bouncing back from injuries, finding somebody you can talk to is super important. It might be reaching out to somebody on Instagram. It might just be taking some time to see if a friend will go get coffee. Heck, talk to a teacher, talk to a coach, talk to somebody you trust, talk to your parents, right? An older brother, a sibling, just someone you trust, and just say, man, I'm having a tough time with this. I just feel like I'm losing out. I feel like I'm getting behind. And I can promise that you're going to gain perspective from having that conversation. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was something that gave you guys some insight. Take a look at the download there. If you guys do need a resource like this one from Priscilla Tallman, she is sending me 4 of these books right here to help you guys bounce back from injuries. That said, that's all for this episode. I'll see you guys next week.